Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive, and this time we're tackling the let them theory. Have you ever felt like you're just trying to control everything and everyone around you? It's exhausting, Riley. This theory is all about letting go, and we've got tons of Mel Robbins to help us out. Podcast episodes, an amazing interview she did with Oprah, even some social media clips.
It's really interesting. There are so many parallels between this theory and some ancient wisdom traditions like Stoicism or Buddhism. That idea about finding peace by focusing on what you can control. Well, in this case, it's all about controlling yourself and how you react to the world,
Yeah,
not other people.
exactly. It's not about being passive or letting people walk all over you. It's about taking back control of your own life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mel Robbins really illustrates this with a story about her son's prom night. Picture this. It's pouring rain. You've got a group of teenagers all dressed up ready for prom and no dinner reservations. As a mom, her first instinct was to jump in and try to fix everything. Find a restaurant at the last minute that can handle 20 kids in tuxes and gowns.
Oh, I can only imagine the chaos.
It's total stress, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's where so many of us get tripped up. We think that if we can just control the situation or control other people's actions, we can avoid those feelings of discomfort or disappointment.
Yeah, we try to orchestrate everything perfectly.
Exactly. But the truth is, we just can't control other people or how things unfold.
We can't control external events. It's like you're constantly battling against reality.
That's a great way to put it. And so in that crazy prom night moment, Mel's daughter actually gives her this really wise advice. Just let them enjoy prom their own way.
That's great advice.
And that's when it all clicked for Mel. She realized that by surrendering control, she was actually releasing all that stress and anxiety she was carrying.
It's like a light bulb moment, right?
Totally. And it highlights something really important. When we try to force things to go a certain way, it's like we're giving our power away. We're allowing other people or external events to control how we feel.
It's like we're hooked into their experience,
Mhm.
letting their choices dictate our emotional state.
Yeah, it's like this energetic hook. We're letting them drain our energy.
Precisely. And the let them theory is all about recognizing those hooks and choosing to unhook yourself. It's about shifting your focus from what you can control to what you can. Your own thoughts, actions, reactions.
So it's not about being passive
Right.
or letting people just walk all over you.
Exactly. It's about taking back your power, choosing where you direct your energy, and recognizing that sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is to simply let go.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Does this mean I just have to sit back and let people do whatever they want? And the answer is not necessarily. It's about finding a healthy balance.
Yeah, it's a great question because it brings up the whole issue of boundaries,
Yeah,
especially in situations where someone's behavior is harmful or toxic.
that's such a critical point. This theory isn't about tolerating mistreatment.
Definitely not.
It's about recognizing that you always have a choice in how you respond, even in challenging situations.
Right. It's not about saying, okay, go ahead, treat me however you want. It's more about recognizing that you have the power to choose how you react, even when you can't control the situation itself.
Okay, so how do we actually put this theory into practice? Because it sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make it work in our everyday lives?
Well, Mel Robbins actually outlines 3 main ways we can apply this theory.
Yeah.
And I think they're all super helpful, especially in those tricky situations where, our control freak tendencies tend to take over.
Oh, yeah, I definitely have those moments.
We all do.
Yeah.
So the first application is all about detachment. And the best way I can explain this is, have you ever felt like you're paddling upstream against a really strong current? You're putting in so much effort, but you're barely making any progress.
Oh my gosh, yes. That feeling is the worst. It's exhausting.
Totally. And that's exactly what it's like when we're desperately trying to control things that are just completely outside of our control.
Yeah.
It's like we're fighting against reality.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And detachment is about recognizing when you're in that upstream battle and choosing to just let go of the oars.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to just float downstream.
Just surrender to the current.
Yeah. It's about accepting what is and finding peace in the present moment, rather than constantly resisting or trying to force things to be different.
I love that. Okay, so give me an example. Like a real life situation where this might come in handy.
Okay, so imagine this. You're at a wedding, super excited to catch up with all your old friends,
Yeah.
but then you get to the reception and realize you've been seated at a table with, distant relatives you barely know, while all your friends are laughing it up at another table.
Ugh, I've totally been there. It's so disappointing.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up in that feeling of, why me? Or even start feeling resentful. Like, why couldn't I sit with my friends?
Yeah, you start scheming about how to switch tables.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's where detachment can be so powerful. Instead of dwelling on the seating chart or trying to orchestrate some kind of table swap, you can just take a deep breath and say to yourself, let them boarding it. It's their wedding. They've arranged things according to their preferences. And by detaching from that need to control the situation, you free yourself up to actually enjoy the celebration, you know, without all that extra baggage or frustration.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's about choosing to focus on the bigger picture, the joy of the occasion, rather than getting all hung up on the little details.
Exactly.
Oh,
Okay, so moving on to the second application of the let them theory. And this one could be a little tougher.
yeah.
It's especially for those of us who are like natural caretakers,
Yeah.
the ones who always want to protect the people we love.
Yeah, I think we all have that instinct to some degree.
Absolutely. And this second application is all about allowing others to fail, which can be really hard, especially when it comes to our kids.
Right.
We want to shield them from making mistakes, from experiencing setbacks.
We want to smooth the path for them.
Yeah. But Mel Robbins actually makes a really compelling argument for why allowing others to fail is actually crucial for their growth.
It's about letting them learn from their own experiences.
Exactly. She shared this really interesting story about her son's school, where the parents were specifically told not to bring forgotten lunches.
Oh, wow. That's tough love.
It is. But the intention behind it was to teach the kids about responsibility, about self-reliance.
So it's about resisting that urge to constantly rescue them, to smooth over every mistake or obstacle.
Exactly. Because by allowing them to experience those natural consequences,
Yeah.
we're actually creating space for them to develop resilience, problem-solving skills, that sense of ownership over their own lives.
It's about empowering them rather than enabling them.
Exactly. And of course, this doesn't mean we just completely abandon them. We can still offer support guidance, but ultimately it's about trusting them to figure things out for themselves.
To learn and grow from their own experiences.
Right. Okay, so the third application of the let them theory, and I think this one might be the most profound, is about letting people be themselves. You know, accepting people for who they are rather than who we think they should be.
Oh, that's a big one. Because it's so easy to fall into that trap, especially in our closest relationships.
Right.
We have these expectations, these ideas about how we think people should behave or who we think they should be.
Absolutely. And Mel Robbins talks about this a lot in the context of romantic relationships. How trying to mold someone into our ideal partner often just leads to resentment and disappointment.
It's like we're trying to force them into a box that they don't fit in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about recognizing that true love is about embracing the other person's flaws and imperfections, not trying to change them.
It's about loving them for who they truly are, not who we want them to be.
Right. And she actually shares this really powerful story from her own life about how she was struggling with intense jealousy over a friend's success.
Oh, wow. That's something I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, definitely. And she realized that her frustration wasn't actually about her friend's achievements. It was about her own feelings of inadequacy, her own tendency to compare herself to others.
It's like that saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that other people's successes don't diminish our own. In fact, they can actually serve as inspiration, showing us what's possible.
So it's about shifting our perspective from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance.
Yes. And letting people be themselves also applies to our interactions with family members, colleagues, friends. It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own unique journey, and we don't have to agree with or approve of their choices to love and accept them.
We can still love and support them, even if we don't always understand their choices.
Exactly. And this reminds me of that saying, you can't change other people. You can only change yourself.
That's so true. It's a powerful reminder.
And that's really the beauty of the let them theory. It shifts our focus from trying to control external circumstances to empowering ourselves to make choices that align with our own values and well-being.
So it's about taking back our power.
Exactly. And before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I think it's really important to address something. Because while the let them theory encourages a healthy detachment and acceptance, it's not an excuse to tolerate harmful or abusive behavior.
Right, because I could see how someone might misinterpret that.
Yeah. And Mel Robbins is very clear about this. You should never let them when someone is engaging in dangerous, discriminatory, boundary-violating actions.
So it's not about being passive in those situations.
Absolutely not. In those situations, it's crucial to step up, advocate for yourself, and even seek help from others if necessary.
So it's about finding that balance between acceptance and self-protection.
Exactly. The let them theory isn't about becoming passive or indifferent. It's about becoming more intentional, more discerning about where we choose to direct our energy and how we choose to engage with the world around us.
I love that. It's about making conscious choices. Okay, so we've talked about what the let them theory is. In some ways, we can use it. But I think it's also really interesting to think about why we're so obsessed with control in the first place.
Yeah, it's like, what's driving that need? What are we really trying to achieve?
Right. Like, is there something deeper going on?
I think so. And Mel Robbins actually offers some really insightful explanations for this.
Yeah, one of the key points she makes is that, you know, we often try to control others as a way to create this sense of like safety predictability.
It makes sense, right? The world can feel so chaotic, so uncertain.
Totally. And when we feel like we have a handle on everything and everyone around us, it can create this illusion of like order stability.
It's like we're building this fortress around ourselves
Yeah.
to protect ourselves from anything unexpected or unpleasant.
But the thing is, that fortress can end up feeling more like a prison, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It can trap us in this cycle of stress and anxiety
Mhm.
because we're constantly on edge trying to maintain that illusion of control.
And here's another thing that Mel Robbins talks about that I found really fascinating. She says that sometimes our controlling behaviors are actually a way of like avoiding our own internal struggles.
That's interesting. So instead of looking inward, we're focusing outward.
Exactly. It's easier to focus on what other people are doing wrong
Yep.
than it is to look at ourselves and, you know, confront our own shortcomings or take responsibility for our own happiness.
It's like a distraction technique.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And Mel Robbins actually shares this really relatable story from her own life about this. She
Yeah.
talks about how she was holding on to this job that was making her totally miserable.
Oh, wow. So she was seeing a bad situation.
Yeah, it was a classic case of, you know, golden handcuffs. She knew deep down that the job wasn't a good fit, but she felt trapped by the financial security it provided.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Totally. And here's the really interesting part. It wasn't until she went on maternity leave and had some distance from that toxic work environment that she was finally able to, like, see things clearly.
So she needed that break to gain some perspective.
Yeah, it's like that separation from her routine allowed her to tap into her own inner wisdom,
Mm.
you know, which had probably been trying to tell her all along that something needed to change.
It's like our intuition knows what's best for us, but we don't always listen.
That's so true. So, okay, let's say we're starting to recognize these patterns in ourselves. How do we actually start to let go?
Well, Mel Robbins talks about paying attention to our energy level.
Energy levels.
Yeah. She says that we often feel depleted, exhausted, resentful when we're clinging to something that's just draining us dry.
Like a relationship that's not working or a job that's making us unhappy.
Exactly. Or even just
Yeah.
like a certain way of thinking that's no longer serving us.
I can definitely see that.
And she uses this really beautiful metaphor. She compares it to a tree in autumn, shedding its leaves to conserve energy and prepare for a new season of growth.
I love that metaphor because it's so true. Like, sometimes we need to let go of things in order to make space for something new.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And just as the tree recognizes when it's time to release what's no longer needed,
Yeah.
we too can learn to discern when it's time to let go of relationships, habits, even thought patterns that are holding us back.
It's about recognizing what's no longer serving us.
Right. And this leads to a really powerful question that Mel Robbins poses. What area of your life would benefit most from a little letting go?
That's such a good question because it really makes you stop and think.
It does. It's an invitation to take an honest look at ourselves and, see where we might be holding on too tightly, where we're trying to force things to be different than they are.
It's about surrendering to the present moment.
Exactly. And as we've learned from the let them theory, it's often in that space of letting go, of surrendering control,
Yeah.
that we actually create the possibility for something new and wonderful to emerge.
New opportunities, new connections, a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment.
Exactly. So as you move forward, think about that question.
Mhm.
What area of your life could use a little bit of letting go? And what might become possible when you release that grip and allow things to unfold naturally?
I think that's a great place to wrap things up. The let them theory is really all about recognizing that true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering ourselves, our thoughts, our actions. And it's about finding that sweet spot between acceptance and action, where we can embrace the present moment while still making conscious choices that shape our future. So go ahead, give yourself permission to let go a little. You might be surprised at what you discover.